Shalom, family. Good to see you all here. Hope you're doing well. Well, we already know about this story how Donald Trump wants to pay lawbreakers reparations and give them enough money to make each and every one of them millionaires. I just don't understand when Donald Trump said they've had it hard. Oh, some of them lost their jobs. They could have left. They were adults. All right. Nobody was forcing them to storm that Capitol. You see them scaling the wall, breaking windows, climbing in the windows. They were doing the most. And I don't know how you're badly punished when the vast majority of them that went in there and vandalized and did all kinds of stuff up in there got 2 week sentences. They got sentenced to 1 week in jail. I promise you, if that crowd was black, y'all would have been handing down sentences for at least a decade. That probably would have been your minimum. But when they got sentenced, it was 3 weeks behind bars, 2 weeks, 1 day, 24 hours in prison, 3 months. That's what how did you have it so hard getting those type of sentences? That's what I want to know. How the hell did you have it so hard and you got those skimpy ass sentences that were handed down? You know, and you can tell even when it came down to the judges, it was all about race. Those judges were white. The participants in the insurrection were white, and they just didn't want to go heavy handed on their own people. So I don't know how Donald Trump is saying these people had it so bad. Oh, they got mistreated. We've been mistreated for 400 damn years. So if you're going to give reparations based on mistreatment, then you got to give it to us then. Because even Donald Trump is a participant in treating us badly. So, I mean, this is unbelievable. So, what these cops are doing, y'all, they are suing Trump to stop him permanently from giving this money out to those that participated in the January 6th insurrection. They said they're not trying to temporarily block it, they are trying to permanently shut the whole thing down. That's what they're trying to do. So, I hope they win. Now, I never thought I would see the day where I would agree with a damn cop, but I agree with them on this one. Definitely. You know, many of these cops were beaten up on that day. They were jumped by mobs of people. You know, they went up in there and did the white mob thing, y'all. That's what they did. So, and we know some people lost their lives. That's why when these folks try to talk about our people protesting and looting and stuff, they got a lot of nerve. They got a lot of nerve. So, y'all, I'm gonna hold on. Let me see. Okay. All right. Just another friendly reminder, 40% off the entire store. And actually, it's already marked down. And it will go on all through the holiday weekend to the 26th. Make sure you use promo code or the link. The link will automatically take the amount off, or you use the promo code. But if you go out there, it's already deducted off the 40%. So you should be able to get it regardless. So make sure you rack up on all the things you need for this weekend sale. All right, y'all. So let's get to the video. Let's see here. Yep. All right, please give me a 1 if you can see my screen. And, since this government can put a slush fund together overnight, you need to put our reparations together overnight. That's what y'all need to do. Since everything can be done overnight for everybody else, you need to put this together overnight. And we know your refusal is 100% based on racism. But these folks are not more entitled to reparations than we are. Try again. Thank you, everybody, for the ones.
Two Capitol Police officers, Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges, have filed the very first lawsuit to stop the slush fund that will pay out January 6 insurrectionists. Todd Blanche himself would not rule out using the nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to pay out violent insurrectionists, despite the fact that he's going to be the one to appoint the 5 commissioners who will oversee the spending of the fund. Now, in their complaint, they said that they will be injured if this fund continues, and in fact, that the stopping of this fund is necessary to, quote, prevent the public financing of paramilitary organizations in the United States. That's where we're at, folks, trying to stop public funding of terrorist organizations. They also say it's a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act because, of course, there is no legislative authority for this fund. Now, if the person who signed this settlement agreement was the chief executive officer of the IRS, and if you've never heard of that title, it's because it's newly created under Trump, and that person wasn't even confirmed by the Senate. In fact, the general counsel of the IRS, who was appointed by Trump, resigned during the settlement agreement announcement. Now, the settlement agreement also includes the stopping of any audits of Trump, his business associates, and his sons, despite the fact of an ongoing IRS audit of at least $100 million. For more on this and other topics, be sure to follow me on the Midas Touch YouTube channel.
Officers who actually defended the Capitol on January 6th are now suing to stop this fund from being created. Do you think that that will actually go anywhere?
It's an important question, Kira, and it is hot off the presses. That suit filed just this morning. I want to read to you what I think is the most critical portion of that lawsuit, because there's no question that the officers who faced violence that day suffered tremendous harm. The question from a standing perspective, i.e. from the perspective of whether they will succeed in even having the chance to get to the merits of their claims with this lawsuit, is whether they are personally injured by the existence of this settlement agreement. And so their argument is this. They say, and I'm quoting from page 18 of their complaint, the anti-weaponization fund is inflicting and will continue to inflict cognizable injuries to the plaintiffs by creating the fund and authorizing the claim criteria that will make payments to, among others, Proud Boys and January 6 rioters, the defendants, those officers. The defendants have inflicted concrete and cognizable harms on the plaintiffs, Dunn and Hodges, 2 of the officers. The idea being that these payments would, in a sense, incentivize continued exercises of violence against officers, including these individuals, potentially and in the future, and that is the injury. I will say, from a legal perspective, on a constitutional ground, that's probably a fairly weak argument for standing, even though morally it's an extremely strong argument.
They should not be rewarded by the government for their attempt to overthrow the government. They tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power. They wanted to assassinate the vice president.
Two officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th are suing the government over this so-called anti-weaponization fund. I spoke to one of them.
They assaulted me and my colleagues. They instilled fear and terror in members of Congress, the staff, congressional staff. There's no reason that the government should be giving these people money.
This is the nearly $1.8 billion taxpayer fund, which Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche says will provide payouts to people who believe they're victims of weaponization and lawfare from the previous administration. It was created as part of a settlement of President Trump's lawsuit against the IRS and Treasury Department, accusing the agencies of unlawfully allowing a government contractor to leak his tax returns and those of his sons and his company in 2020. The fund, we're told, will be overseen by a 5-member commission appointed by the Attorney General. Government watchdog groups and lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are asking questions. Some are calling it a slush fund. January 6 rioters could likely apply it for money. And here's what Vice President J.D. Vance told reporters about whether that includes those who attacked officers.
We don't in the United States say that everybody who's accused of a crime is automatically guilty in a court of public opinion. You've got to actually look at this stuff and figure out, what were they accused of? Maybe they did something bad even, but what they were accused of was way worse of what they actually did. Maybe they had their entire lives ruined in a totally disproportionate way. That's fundamentally illegitimate and political.
What would you say to someone who questions the standing for you and former Officer Dunn, the personal stake that you have in this outcome? What is your personal stake?
Unfortunately, I've been receiving all sorts of threats since January 6, 2021. And even since we announced the lawsuit today, I've received threats, new ones.
What have people been saying since today, the new threats?
Just that I'm about to be taken out of the game. In the past, there have been references that, they're coming to get me on a pale horse, which is a reference to Revelations and death in the Bible. The MPD Intel actually contacted me about that one because they were concerned. There've been more explicit threats to my colleagues, actual assaults on their families, bomb threats at events we attend. And giving these people money would just empower them, give them an incredible amount of resources to further carry out these threats. And since they're not afraid of any legal repercussions because Trump has already pardoned them and made it clear that he has their back no matter what, and they have no ethical qualms about what they do, the only barrier to further violence is resources, which they would have in a great abundance if they were given $1.7 billion.
So you're going to sit here and tell me that 2 U.S. Capitol Police officers, one here on the left that was captured on video being crushed by rioters on January 6th, they defended the Capitol. They are suing the Trump administration. They named Todd Blanche and Scott Bessent as defendants to stop the slush fund of taxpayer dollars that could be used, which Trump and J.D. Vance, and nobody said that wouldn't happen, to pay off January 6 rioters. You're telling me 2 people that defended the U.S. Capitol from insurrectionists are now going to sue the U.S. government because taxpayer dollars would be or could be or more than likely will be used to pay off the people that assaulted them while they protected our democracy. That's what you're going to tell me. You're going to tell me that this is a thing. Let's fucking go, boys. Fucking get them. Fucking get them, boys. Mount up. We ride at dawn.
In breaking news, the first of what will be several lawsuits have been filed against Donald Trump's anti-weaponization slush fund, filled with $1.8 billion of taxpayer dollars, and a fraudulent settlement of a bad faith lawsuit in which Trump directed everybody he controls, the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Treasury Department, to bend the knee and give himself money by way of a tax waiver and to fund Jan 6 insurrectionists. And who better to file the first suit, to come to the rescue, to hold the line, than Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges, former Capitol and Metro Police, who have been staunch advocates to make sure that history doesn't forget what happens on Jan 6. They filed their first lawsuit. It embeds new information that we have about the bad faith, illegitimate nature of the lawsuit. And it makes a very interesting point that could only be made through their vantage point. that this allowing Jan 6 insurrectionists to get their hands on hundreds of millions of dollars of money is funding violent insurrectionists, making not only Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges insecure, but allowing for the refunding of groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and those that attacked the Capitol, and giving them capital to continue their terrorist campaigns is also illegal. That's a very good vantage point, a very good observation that can only be made by people like Harry Dunn and Daniel Hodges. You're on the Midas Touch Network and on Legal AF. I'm Michael Popak. Let's get to the brand new filing. I've been predicting that this would happen, a lawsuit filed this week sometime before Memorial Day, and it's happened. Here's what, and I'm going to post this on Legal AF Substack. Here's what the complaint says. This is first page, paragraph 1. In the most brazen act of presidential corruption this century. And that's saying a lot for this president. President Donald J. Trump has created a $1.776 billion taxpayer-funded slush fund to finance the insurrectionists and paramilitary groups that commit violence in his name. Think of that. Isn't that just perfectly put of what he's trying to do? He says, especially on paragraph 3, it is the settlement of paragraph 2. The settlement was a corrupt sham, premised on a corrupt sham of a fraudulent lawsuit, that the fund encourages, paragraph 3, those who enacted violence in the president's name to continue to do so and rewards them. Dunn and Hodges already face credible threats of death and violence on a regular basis. The fund substantially increases the danger. Second, if allowed to begin making payments, the fund will directly finance the violent operations of rioters, paramilitaries, and their supporters who threatened plaintiffs' lives that day. Who could forget the photo of Daniel Hodges being crushed in the revolving door? Let me show you a clip so you can remember of his.
Why did you feel like you had to file this lawsuit?
Well, just listening to you just say that, suing to block $1.776 billion payment to, I wouldn't even say defendants, I would say terrorists, insurrectionists, and people responsible for one of the darkest days in American history. It is crazy. Why do I have to sue? Why do I have to sue? Because this is what this administration is all about. It's about rewarding bad players. January 20th last year, when Donald Trump was inaugurated, he forgave the insurrectionists for what they did to us, what they did to this country. He forgave them. And just yesterday, they just announced that they are going to reward them for their efforts on January 6th. And, like I said, it's unclear who the actual payments are going to. But I think this also shows an incentive to the people who committed violence in Donald Trump's name.
What makes you think that you can succeed?
Well, first of all, we're right. I always feel good when we're doing the right thing morally, and the American people stand with us. I do believe it's a very the issue at hand is this is taxpayer money, and taxpayers are going to be the ones footing the bill for this. But somehow along the way, Donald Trump tells us we don't have money for health care, for child care, but we got millions and billions of dollars for illegal wars or in this case, rewarding insurrectionists. It's not fair to the American people. It's not fair to the taxpayers.
After Donald Trump dropped his $10 billion case against the IRS, I guess the way they came to a deal was to give him nearly $2 billion in what he calls his anti-weaponization fund, which, let's just say what it is. It is a slush fund for his followers, because its sole purpose is to give, let's call them reparations to the traitors who stormed the Capitol in 2021. Because it's not about anti-weaponization under Trump, because that's solely what he's doing, like indicting people like James Comey over a fucking picture of seashells. It's about all of the disgusting traitors who supported Donald Trump when Biden was in office, and Biden's DOJ decided to actually prosecute them for crimes. And because that money would be going to January 6 insurrectionists, Capitol Police officers have filed a lawsuit to block that fund. And they're actually doing this very cleverly in order to cover their bases, because it argues that the fund violates the 14th Amendment's prohibition on use of federal money to pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States. But they also make sure to clarify, because they know that the Trump administration is going to try to have this thrown out on standing, saying that the Capitol Police have no right to really bring this because they have no grievance. The lawsuit also states that the Capitol Police officers have faced ongoing harassment and death threats from participants in that riot. The officers say that they have a personal stake in this dispute because it will likely be used to provide financial support to people who will fuel that harassment in the future. They made sure that this would not be immediately thrown out on standing. I don't know what's going to happen with this or how long it's going to take, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Because once again, Donald Trump is trying to steal billions of dollars of our tax money to enrich himself and his cohorts. It's not like we really need any more further confirmation as to how corrupt this fucking regime is. But since Donald Trump is always about the grift, let's be honest of where this money's probably going to go. He's going to make this promise that it's going to his supporters. He's probably going to try using that $2 billion to pay for his ballroom, because so far the Senate will not let him do it with taxpayer money.
The fund would compensate people Trump feels were mistreated by the DOJ under the Biden administration, some of whom attacked police during the January 6th riots. Now, 2 officers who helped protect the Capitol that day are suing to stop it.
We're not asking to be compensated for this. We're asking for this to be stopped.
Just to be clear, people that hurt police get money all the time.
Attorney General Todd Blanche has not committed to banning funds from going to anyone who assaulted police. He said a commission will decide who receives those payouts. We'll be right back.
I never thought I'd be on the side of the police, but I hope, please, I hope the police wins this one. I really hope they win. I don't want to hear anybody of the Republican or white people, Anglo-Americans, say anything about, oh no, we can't give reparations to the African Americans of the United States and the black enslaved people. No, we can't give them reparations. Why? What? Really? After this, you guys are going to give reparations to January 6ers?
Hey y'all, I like to show the things that people are doing to fight back. And 2 officers who survived January 6th are suing. Yep. Because how dare Trump pay insurrectionists, people who violated our Constitution, treasonous traitors. And let's face it, this fund is to give money to the YT supremacists, the YT nationalists, in order to increase their devious, treasonous activities. So again, the lawsuit claims that the government's anti-weaponization fund is an illegal slush fund that Trump used to finance insurrectionists and paramilitary groups that commit violence in his name. No statute authorizes its creation. The settlement on which it is premised is a corrupt sham, and its design violates the Constitution and federal law. Y'all, listening to all these lies piss me off because I cannot stand a liar. Everything that this president does is encouraging and advocating for violence. We have an example of that in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with the government arming these vigilante YT men. That is the purpose of not requiring permits for concealed weapons, or saying that you can order a weapon through the mail. I'm not going to mention the men's name because they already get unaliving threats every day. And where's Back the Blue? It's all lies and gaslighting. Well, what do you all think? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Please like and share.
It's the kind of breaking news that I like, because 2 police officers who defended the U.S. Capitol during the January 6, 2021 riot sued President Trump to block the $1.8 billion slush fund set up by the DOJ to compensate Trump allies, anti-patriots, anti-Americans who claim that they were victims of prosecutorial overreach. In the most brazen act of presidential corruption this century, Donald Trump has created a $1.8 billion taxpayer-funded slush fund to finance the insurrectionists and parliamentary groups that committed violence in his name. There are 2 plaintiffs in this civil complaint in the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. Harry Dunn, a former U.S. Capitol Police officer, and Daniel Hodges, an active officer of the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington. Dunn and Hodges were at the Capitol when it was stormed by a mob of anti-patriots called Trump supporters, disrupting a joint session in Congress that was being held that day to confirm the electoral victory of Joe Biden.
Two police officers who defended the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th attack are now suing to stop the Trump administration's new $1.776 billion anti-weaponization fund. The fund was announced earlier this week by the Justice Department as part of a settlement tied to President Trump's lawsuit over leaked tax returns. Now, according to the DOJ, the money is meant to compensate people who say they were harmed by politically motivated investigations or government weaponization. But retired Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn and D.C. Metro Officer Daniel Hodges say the program is unconstitutional and could end up benefiting January 6th rioters, including people convicted of assaulting police officers before later receiving pardons. Now, in their lawsuit, they described the funds as taxpayer-funded slush fund that could encourage future political violence. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche has defended the program, saying it isn't designed for any one political group and that an independent commission will decide who qualifies. Still, during congressional testimony, Blanche refused to rule out payments to January 6th defendants, which sparked backlash from both Democrats and some Republicans.
This is an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they're a victim of weaponization.
And Senator Tom Tillis reacted to the lawsuit filed by the officers, calling the fund absurd.
You know what? I hope they have standing, and they may have standing if they happen to be some of the ones who were assaulted, the ones that I saw bloody and bruised, those folks. I think every single one of them hopefully have standing and will have that opportunity to do that. I think it's irresponsible. It sends a signal, hey, go breach the Capitol, destroy the building, assault police officers, you may even get compensated for someday. That's absurd.
The fund will be managed by a 5-member commission and paid for through the federal judgment fund. And any unused money would go back to the government once the program expires in 2028. Meanwhile, former HHS spokesperson Michael Caputo had already filed a claim seeking $2.7 million from the fund. In a letter to Blanche, he argued that the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane and Mueller-era Russia investigations unfairly targeted him and caused serious financial and personal damage to his family.
All right. Well, kudos to these police officers. At least they're trying to do something to shut this whole thing down. So what they're saying is they're not asking for anything. They're just asking that these insurrectionists never get one dime for what they did on January 6th. And I understand that. That makes perfectly good sense. So we'll see where this goes. They have the right to sue. And you know what? My question is, where are the other people? Especially in Congress and the Senate, why aren't you collectively trying to shut this whole thing down? Y'all are right there in Washington, D.C., both sides. Where are you? You know? And I know the Congressional Black Caucus scary ass Steven motherfuckers ain't gonna say nothing. And you don't hear nothing out of not one of them. You don't hear nothing. Y'all are all Steven. every last one of y'all is Steven, men and women. Y'all are Steven. So y'all, this will be my final live for today. Thank you so much for being here. I deeply appreciate it. And Dominique Hudson, thank you so much for the super sticker and your support for my channel. So y'all, I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this because no money should be dispersed to January 6ers over the descendants of slaves in this country. Nobody from January 6th deserves one dime. I don't care how horribly they've been treated. How horribly have they really been treated over one day? Try 4 centuries. Okay, one day ain't crap compared to 4 centuries. How many of the J6ers got lynched? Okay, how many of them been through Jim Crow? How many of them were mass incarcerated? Yeah, the sentences they got were jokes. 2 weeks in jail. Give me a break. Y'all only gave them those sentences because they were white people. That's why they got them laughable sentences. How many of you have been on jobs and you had to deal with a noose being hung up on the job or racial epithets written on the bathroom wall? See, y'all ain't been through shit. And this government has failed. Because if you would have done your job and given these people the appropriate sentence, then what could Donald Trump do? Y'all wouldn't even give them a decent sentence that matched the crime. So, like I said, it can go either way. One thing about America and the government, y'all ain't concerned about being fair to nobody. You are just concerned about taking care of your favorite people. Very racially biased. So, y'all, I will see you tomorrow. Be on the lookout for my upcoming lives and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Shalom, family.